how when you are fully supporting your team, that actually may be really hurting the accountability that your team takes. So when you find yourself in a lot of supporting mode, and that looks like, hey, like adding extra check-ins, that is making sure like you're essentially your team's Google, as one of my clients has called it, of like constantly reminding them, like, have you done this? Have you done that? And when they're asking questions, you're always answering the questions. So you may think all of that support, you're being very supportive to your team, but it's actually hurting your team's ability to be independent. It's hurting their ability to take ownership and be accountable. And guess what? It is costing you a lot of time. And that time, you might be asking yourself, like, my calendar is full from morning to evening, Kim. I don't have time to figure out like how to get my team to take more responsibility because I just don't have the time. And you're finding yourself at 5 o'clock, almost wanting to close down your laptop and going like, I haven't done any of my own priorities. All I've done is spent the day is helping my team, supporting them, managing, et cetera, et cetera. So here's where I wanted to do. This is why I wanted to bring this conversation up, because this is a topic that's coming up a lot inside my accelerator, which is my 6-month signature program, all around how do you build a team that takes ownership, that takes accountability, that can work independently. Best thing, if they could do it while you're also on holidays and then you don't come back and it's a complete disaster. So one of those things that I have found, so when it comes to the support that we're giving that you might be giving your teams, it's like, well, if I keep stepping in, I have to step in because they're struggling and I want to be supportive. And that's what good leaders do. I get it. Honestly, I do. Because here's the thing, you've been taught, and I was taught this too, that leadership means being there for your team. And especially as a woman leader, we often feel this even more of like, hey, we were taught growing up, like we need to be kind, you need to be nice, you need to like make sure everyone's functioning and everyone belongs. So we end up removing the obstacles. You are ending up solving the problems. You're making things easier for your team because, hey, that's what my role should be as a leader. And you really don't want to be that cold, detached leader who kind of leaves people hanging. So when you see someone in your team struggling, guess what you do? You step in, you help, you solve. Sometimes you even just like, oh, just, let me do it. Because who hasn't been there thinking like, if I do it, it's going to get done way faster than if I get somebody else to do it. Because that's what support looks like. But here's the thing. What you're doing every time you do that is you're actually stepping in to rescue your team. So what you're teaching them in that sense is they're not learning how to function on their own. They're not learning ownership. They're not learning accountability. They're learning and getting taught. It's like, oh, well, I don't need to problem solve because I can just go to you and you're going to fix it for me. They don't need to think critically anymore because you do it for them. They don't need to have to find out their own answers because you do it for them. So we're going to pull this right down into a very simple example and think of it as if you're ever watching kids growing up, and are you going to do everything for them? I mean, if you were to do your child's homework, would that mean that they learned what they needed to learn? And when they go to school, yeah, they might get a great grade, but they're not learning it themselves. They're not able to do it themselves. They can't replicate it because you have done it for them. The same happens within your team. Because every time that you step in and you solve it for them, you keep teaching your team that they don't have to do it. They don't need to be responsible for it. The amount of messages I get in my inbox and say like, oh, you know what, I have like my team just can't take it. Like everything keeps landing back on my desk. It's like, okay, well, what did you try? Right? Some are like, oh, we tried huddle, like having more huddles or getting more check-ins. Really like explaining it again. But if we're not wanting to get uncomfortable, and this is where I'm going to go into the R within my DOER framework, which is a proven strategy inside the accelerator that my clients use to really save themselves time. Because what you're doing every time you step into support is you're really rescuing them. You're rescuing your team from the outcome, from the consequence of not getting it done. And I get it. It is so uncomfortable because what happens if you don't rescue them? What if you don't support them in the way and don't just do it for them? Oh my goodness, it can make look bad on you because all of a sudden that result's not coming through. They're missing deadlines. Things are not getting done. Okay, yes. And I get it. It's really difficult to think like it gets uncomfortable to miss deadlines. However, if there's no natural consequence to the lack of action, lack of ownership, lack of accountability, how do you think it's going to change? So when you look at those leaders that are operating without supporting them, and I mean in terms of without rescuing. So support is a little bit of a double-edged sword with this one, right? So yes, we need to make sure the support, the resources are there for the team, that they have the permission to make decisions, that they have the resources in order to do their work, that they have all the capabilities and resources to do the work and take the ownership and complete the task and get the outcome. Well, the difference is leaders whose teams actually take accountability and have ownership, they don't continue to rescue. They start coaching. And I know one of my clients, when I shared this with her, and she was very open about this. She's like, oh my God, like the first day, it was so uncomfortable. I had team members and everybody in the organization keeps coming to me with questions, and they're asking me questions. And I said, so what did you do? Like, did you answer it? She's like, no. I didn't want to rescue them again. So I said, well, what have you tried? Have you looked up this information have you tried to find the answer for yourself? And she's like, the pure panic that shows up in their face of like, oh my God, like what? You're not going to answer the question? Like I have to figure this out myself. She's like, that was so like eye-opening, because they never expected me to not answer the question. They just expected me to continuously just kind of spoon feed everything that they needed, rather than me taking that opportunity to say, like, hold on a minute, like, have you looked it up? Have you tried to solve this yourself? And she let her team struggle a bit. And the best leaders whose teams can operate independently and take accountability, they let their team struggle. And it's not because they don't care, but it's because in that struggle, that builds the capability of that team. So for the leaders if you're like, oh yeah, but I really want to support them. Well, are you rescuing them? Are you keep doing it for them? Because if you do, your team is going to stay dependent. And for those that move into the coaching side of it, and think of it like, let's look at sports. If you're looking at sports, and we'll talk soccer or football, whichever side of the ocean and hemisphere you're on, but the coach, he may have played football, or he or she, we'll go for she will have played football before. She might have played football before. So she knows exactly what to do. And she could go in and score the goals, or she could go in and be the goalkeeper. But does she do it? No. She coaches her team to do that, take that responsibility and perform on the field. So when I work with my clients, we really start on it, especially when it comes to their team, is we start to look at, okay, what are the things that I need to do? And like I said, it's a 4-part framework. It's the DOER framework. I'm going to concentrate just on the last one, which is the R, which is about resisting rescuing. And this is really about asking questions and be open for it. Like, I mean, you still, in terms of support that you can share, that is about sharing support for the resources. If they don't have the skills, well, how do we make sure that they get the skills, right? So start asking questions like, what have you tried before? Or what have you tried so far? Because that forces them to think about, hey, what have I done before they ask you? And guess what? If you've done this a couple times, they're going to know you're going to ask this. And then keep open-ended questions. What do you think the next step should be? Because again, this trend doesn't keep the ownership with you. And I've talked about this in a previous video, because the first part in terms of the DOER framework is all about getting that ownership of the outcomes. Well, that's the second step. So defining the outcome and then making sure that you've got the ownership and the execution. That's with your team members. But that transfers that ownership of solving it back to them rather than you going like, oh yeah, here's what your next step is. You need to do it. And trust me, I get it. It's so much easier if you do it yourself. But that doesn't that makes your team dependent on you rather than becoming that independent team that can function when you are there and when you are not there. And another question could be, what support do you actually need for me? So that was what we would ask of them. Like you ask your team, what other support do you need from me? Because then you can start understanding, hey, where is it really that there's a block and an obstacle that they can't get past? And where is it just that like, hey, it's just easy for me to ask you the question. And when I started implementing this framework with one of my clients, and she had 23 plus people in her team, plus multiple managers as well. Over the course of 4 months, she reclaimed over 20 plus hours a week. This meant no more working weekends, no more working evenings. And she had time in her schedule, in her day, to really focus more on the strategic work of her department, to be setting out what is the future vision of this department? How are we going to grow? How are we making sure that we are improving specific processes? That is the outcome when you start to create accountability and you start creating ownership within your teams, so that, because you've hired great people, that they are really starting to take responsibility for what is theirs. And guess what? When you start asking questions, you move from continuously rescuing them and over supporting them in this case, to really holding them accountable and coaching them. Most of the time, they don't actually need you to solve it. They just need some permission that they can think it through. So when you start coaching instead of rescuing, you're not being unsupportive. What you're doing is really building a culture and a environment where you're building capable people who don't need you to function. And even better, you're building your future pipeline for leaders. So this isn't cold leadership. This isn't about being harsh or like just ignoring people. This is the kindest thing you can do because you want them to be able to function on their own. So I'm going to leave you with a question here. Do you want to keep rescuing your team and stay stuck as the person they can't operate without? And guess what that means? Working weekends, working evenings. Your holidays are likely not going to get by without at least having to answer multiple emails, multiple phone calls. Or do you want to stop rescuing them and start coaching them into accountability and ownership so that you can finally focus on the strategy? Because if you are part of the women that are part of that second group, right, where you are able to coach them, and maybe you get to reclaim the time. Like I shared, one of my clients has reclaimed over 20 plus hours a week. Could you imagine what you would do with that time? If you are ready to stop rescuing and start leading and building that team that operates without you, then I want you to comment audit and grab a team audit session with me, because in this call, I'm going to show you exactly, hey, we're going to identify what is going on. Where is it that there's a missing link in terms of why your team isn't functioning where you want it to be right now? And I will create a personalized strategy with you on the call as to what are the next steps for you to take so that you do have that team able to function, able to take responsibility. And just like I said, have that experience, a little bit of a lot of experience, but have that experience when people look at you with panic, going like, oh my God, you're not going to save me again. You're not going to do it for me. Because that is the first step to getting them to take responsibility, to getting them to move forward in what they need to do. All right. So if you want to apply this to your team, then I want you to book a team audit call and comment the word audit or DM me the word audit, whichever one you prefer, and grab your spot. There's only a few spots yet left this month. And when you do, again, we're going to spend 30 minutes together, and we're going to talk about where it is you're at right now. I'm going to walk you through the questions that I walk with my clients through to identify exactly where things are breaking down and share the proven strategies of how to fix it. So you don't have to go and look and listen to this video in another month ago, like, oh God, we're still in the same place. I'm still having my team send me their emails with questions. I'm like, you could have, if you just read the email, you would have answered the question. So if that is you, again, book an audit call and grab your spot. So comment audit. And I look forward to having seeing or talking to you on that call. And if you've got other questions, please drop them in the comments. I'm happy to answer questions or DM me your questions, because I have really great conversations also in my DMs. So let me know if there's this brings up some questions for you, and what is the biggest insight for you today. All right, we'll talk to you again soon.